think I come to my work from a more instinctive place often now, and so I decide I want to make a thing and then I have to figure out why I find that interesting. We're often taught that artists need to figure out what you want to do and why you want to do it before you start, but I guess a philosophy that I have about practicing generally is that artists need to discover themselves and who they are and what they're about by actually making the work. For a time I thought I had to make my practice work for me, or I had to invest something into it to get inspiration. But I just have faith that there is a font that will keep offering. I like symbolism. I like loaded imagery. I prefer to lay it all out and just leave it alone. I think that's more interesting to me. I quite like things that leave room for the audience. I make it because it interested me, and hopefully the flow-on effect is that it interests someone else, or it bothers someone else, or it excites someone else. I think people are drawn to beauty, but beauty for me is something like a Trojan horse. It's what I use to draw my viewers in and hold them, and maybe to talk about something else. For me, learning about art in the 90s and artists from the 80s and before that real picture generation of artists who found their work in source material like magazines and clippings on cutting room floors, would create art that somehow removed meaning or shifted meaning or added meaning by collaging something, and I was really drawn to that generation of artists. I guess the mannequin works are the extension of so much of the portraiture that I make, both portraits of myself or my family, or portraits that I feel are self-portraits in absence of myself. He sort of comes out of that body of work, and giving form to this other version of myself. I think we start to become aware of different versions of ourselves in lots of different ways, whether it's this thing we project in social media, or in my case you start to read about yourself, which often I don't feel is a true account. So I quite like to give form to this thing that I don't quite recognise. And I always loved mannequins. I think they're so blank, like a blank canvas. You can project ideas onto it. Audiences are often find my work very polarising, but if anything, I try to remove ideas about an audience when I'm making the work. I try to make it just for me, and it's hard to do sometimes, but I think if I can do that, the work is inevitably better for it. I want to elicit strong responses rather than shrugs. That brings both positive and negative responses, and I embrace the negative ones. I mean, they distill my practice for me. I think the best things happen when you have a lot of doubt and you're kind of not sure if you should be making it, and you have some concerns about the work. I think the best things come from that kind of risk. So all of this gets ripped out, and then if I find myself being quite risk averse, that's when I think the practice is maybe not what it could be or should be. And sometimes you have to just take a good hard look at things, a good hard look at yourself in order to do that. And so much of what we tend to repress, I've learnt that makes very good subject matter, and to be brave about showing it. It's far more interesting to wrestle with that. So this work is called Acropolis Now. This incredibly beautiful ruin stands, often with scaffolding on it. It's probably the most famous piece of vandalism and looting in modern history as well. It's a great sadness that this incredibly beautiful building is broken up, that it's not whole, and so it's just by virtue of painting it, it becomes a political statement. obviously I'm Greek, and it's this kind of symbol of Greek culture and the bedrock of so much that we hold dear in contemporary society. You know, it's this deeply personal work for me. I used to think that the trajectory of my work was fairly linear, but I think it is quite cyclical. I come back to things, and so much of what I make work about, I guess, has always been with me since I was a kid. I look at my practice and I think this traces back to this thing or that thing. In lots of ways, my work used to look outward more from my life, but now probably looks more inward. All of it could be characterized as self-portraiture.